Imagine the crack of thunder splitting the night sky. But it's not thunder, it's the scream of a woman, raw and primal, as a Viking blade slices through her lover's throat, his blood spraying like dark wine across her trembling skin. She stands there frozen in the flickering torchlight, her gown torn, exposing the curve of her breast heaving with terror, while the chieftain's eyes lock onto her with a hunger that's both savage and seductive, promising a fate worse than death, a life of forbidden submission, where her body becomes his battlefield. This is the untold shadow of the Viking Age, an era from the 8th to the 11th centuries when Norse warriors, led by legendary figures like Ragnar Lodbrok, descended upon the coasts of Britain, Ireland, and Francia like wolves upon sheep. They weren't just raiders, they were architects of empire, building their power on the backs of the conquered. Monasteries burned, villages crumbled, and in the chaos, women were the most prized spoils, not mere trophies, but thralls, slaves bound to labor, trade, and the whims of their captors, integrated into Scandinavian society or sold like livestock. These women vanished into history's silence, their stories erased, their voices drowned in the North Sea's roar. Feel the dread creeping in, that icy grip on your spine, as we delve into this world. It's crucial because it forces us to confront the terror of the unknown, the psychological abyss where hope flickers like a dying flame. These women weren't just victims. They were echoes of every silenced soul, their fear a mirror to our own vulnerabilities. Empathy blooms from this dread, pulling you into their plight, making you ache for the forgotten. The raid begins at dawn, the longships slicing through fog-shrouded waters like serpents hunting prey. The chieftain, broad-shouldered and scarred, his beard braided with beads of conquest, signals the attack. Oars dip silently, hearts pound. Then, explosion. Warriors leap ashore, axes gleaming, shields clashing against the screams of the unprepared. A coastal village in Northumbria awakens to hell. Monks flee their scriptoriums, clutching crosses that offer no salvation. Farmers grab pitchforks, only to be felled in sprays of crimson. Amid the flames, the women huddle, wives, daughters, sisters, their eyes wide with the dawning horror. One, let's call her Elara, a young healer with raven hair cascading like midnight silk, clutches her child to her chest. Her husband charges forward, sword in hand. But a Viking's blow sends him crumpling, his lifeblood pooling at her feet. The air thickens with smoke and the metallic tang of death. Dread mounts as the invaders round them up, rough hands groping, assessing value like merchants at market. Tension coils tighter. The chieftain strides through the melee, his presence commanding, his gaze lingering on Elara's form, tracing the swell of her hips beneath her shift, igniting a forbidden spark of desire amid the destruction. He claims her first, his fingers brushing her arm in a touch that's both brutal and electric, a power dynamic that pulses with sensual menace. She's dragged to the center, where the spoils are divided. Warriors argue over shares gold, cattle, and flesh. Elara watches as friends are separated, sisters torn from brothers, the cries building to a cacophony of despair. What worsens it? The unchecked authority of these chiefs, rooted in Norse customs where thralls were property, devoid of rights. As documented in the Icelandic sagas, like the saga of the Orkney Islanders, slaves could be bought, sold, or slain at will. The Gragas, Iceland's medieval law code, codified this. Thralls owned nothing, not even their bodies. Historians like Neil Price from Uppsala University unearthed the grim truth. Through archaeology buried slaves, decapitated, their remains whispering of ritual violence. The Annals of Ulster, from AD 821, chronicle raids that hauled away a great booty of women, their fates sealed in silence. Forced marches begin, the captives bound with rough ropes that chafe skin already bruised. Elara stumbles over rocky shores, her bare feet bleeding, the child ripped from her arms and handed to another thrall. Separation claws at her soul the ultimate escalation, turning personal loss into eternal void. Warriors prod them onward, their laughter mocking, their eyes devouring. One guard, his breath hot against her neck, whispers promises of what awaits, his hand grazing her thigh in a tantalizing threat that blends fear with an unwelcome heat. The erotic undercurrent of dominance fueling the dread. Aboard the longships, the true horror unfolds. Waves crash like judgments from the gods. Elara is chained below deck, the dim light casting shadows that dance like predators. The chieftain descends, his form silhouetted, muscles rippling under furs. He approaches, not with immediate violence, but with a calculated seduction, a finger tracing her jawline, forcing her to meet his storm-gray eyes. "You are mine now," he growls, his voice a rumble that vibrates through her. The power imbalance throbs with intensity. She's captive, yet his desire elevates her to a twisted throne of subjugation. Forbidden urges stir the way his touch ignites sparks in the cold. The sensual pull of survival intertwining with revulsion. Dread peaks as the ship sails north, the coastline fading like a forgotten dream. Elara witnesses first acts of domination. A fellow captive, fair-haired and defiant, is claimed publicly on deck, her cries mingling with the wind, a spectacle that enforces submission. The warrior's rituals, drawn from ancient customs, blur lines between conquest and carnal rite. Ibn Fadlan's accounts, though later, echo these slaves prepared for masters with baths and adornments, their bodies oiled, senses heightened in a haze of erotic preparation before the inevitable. Yet, in this abyss, glimmers of resilience flicker. Elara's mind races, plotting whispers of escape, her healer's knowledge a secret weapon. Hope, fragile as sea foam, persists amid despair. The narrative pulses faster. Raids multiply. Captives swell the holds. Tensions erupt in shipboard skirmishes where thralls are pawns in power plays. One woman resists, earning a lash that scars her back, her pain a rallying cry silenced by the sea. Think of it, this vulnerability in isolated hamlets. Much like today's shadowed alleys where human traffickers prey on the desperate. Economic chasms exploit the weak, abducting souls into modern slavery rings, forcing labor or worse. Far from home, it's the same dread, the erasure of self, the commodification of bodies. We relate because power's abuse lingers, a universal scar on humanity. The chapter hurtles toward its close. Night falls on the longship, stars indifferent witnesses. Elara lies in the chieftain's grasp, his arm heavy across her waist, a chain of flesh. His breath stirs her hair, a mix of salt and musk that tantalizes even as it terrifies. In this intimate cage, she feels the first stirrings of a dangerous adaptation survival's seductive whisper, blending hate with the erotic thrill of the forbidden. But dread lingers, a shadow promising more horrors ashore. As the ship nears Scandinavian fjords, Elara gazes at the horizon, her heart a storm of despair and defiant hope. What awaits in the Viking halls? Ritual, resale, or reluctant integration? The saga unfolds, leaving you breathless, craving the next wave of revelation. Reflect on this. In the silence of history, resilience echoes loudest, a testament to the human spirit's unyielding fire. The fjords loom like jagged scars on the Earth's face, but as the longship docks, Elara's world shatters anew not with the crash of waves, but with the chieftain's hand gripping her throat, forcing her to kneel on the frost-kissed shore, his lips brushing her ear in a whisper that drips. With possession, here you break or you bend, and bending, oh, it will taste so sweet. Her skin prickles under his touch, a forbidden fire igniting in the cold, where dominance dances with desire, turning survival into a seductive trap, building from the raid's brutal harvest. We now enter the Viking homelands, Norway's deep valleys, Sweden's forested halls, where jarls like our chieftain rule with iron fists wrapped in fur. These lords, echoes of Ragnar's kin, wove captives into their webs, feeding a slave trade that stretched from Dublin's bustling markets to Byzantium's golden gates. Women like Elara faced a grim choice: assimilate as concubines or laborers, their bodies bartered in an economy built on blood and bondage. Some endured ritual ends, sacrificed to gods or masters. Others were resold like spices in far ports. This system, etched into Norse culture, turned human lives into currency, a dark engine driving their world. Anger boils now, hot and unrelenting, as we witness this injustice, a rage at the dehumanizing machine that stripped souls bare. It's vital here, this fury, because it shatters our complacency, forcing us to question history's blind spots. We reflect on silent complicity, on how societies bury truths to protect the powerful. This anger demands accountability, pulling us deeper into the narrative, urging us to honor the erased. Rival hits like a storm. The ship grinds against the dock, warriors unloading spoils. Amid cheers from kin, Elara stumbles ashore, chains rattling, her feet numb on icy pebbles. The settlement sprawls before her, long houses of timber and turf, smoke curling from hearths like serpent's breath. Jarls gather, appraising the whole gold glints, cattle low, but eyes linger longest on the women, their forms outlined in tattered gowns, a tantalizing display of vulnerability and allure. Deterioration quickens. Elara is dragged to the chieftain's hall, a cavernous space lit by flickering oil lamps. Here, enforced roles begin. She's thrust into drudgery, grinding grain till her hands bleed, scrubbing floors on knees that ache. But intimacy lurks, a shadow with sharp edges. The chieftain summons her at night, his chamber heavy with mead and musk. He circles her like a wolf, fingers tracing her spine through thin fabric, awakening pulses of forbidden heat amid her hate. "Serve me," he commands, his voice a low thunder, pulling her into a dance of power, where submission sparks erotic flames, her body yielding not from want, but from the razor edge of survival. Stakes soar. Threats whisper through the halls. Ritual killings for the gods, where slaves are adorned, oiled, and offered in ecstasy before the blade falls. Ibn Fadlan, the Arab traveler in the 10th century, etched this horror in his accounts. Vikings preparing thralls with sensual rites, exploiting them carnally before sacrificial deaths. A blend of pleasure and peril that chills the blood. Archaeological digs at Burka reveal slave graves, bones tangled in silence. Markers of this grim fate. Elara overhears plans for resale, her value weighed against silver. Her fate a coin toss in markets like Dublin, where Norse traders haggle over lives. Consequences deepen the wound. Identities fracture. Elara, once a healer, now a shadow. Her name unspoken, her past a ghost. Generational chains bind children born of such unions inherit bondage. A cycle fueled by economic greed and cultural norms. The Landnámabók, Iceland's book of settlements, chronicles forced intermarriages, blending bloodlines in reluctant unions. Historians like Ben Raphael dissect this slaving economy, showing how it propped up Viking might, turning raids into riches. Yet anger fuels resilience. Elara's spirit simmers, her eyes flashing defiance in stolen moments. She tends wounds in secret, using herbs smuggled from the wild, forging bonds with other thralls, whispers of rebellion in the dark. Hope flickers, thin as dawn light, amid despair. One night, as the chieftain claims her again, his hands roaming with possessive hunger, she feels a shift, not surrender, but strategy. The sensual pull, that erotic undercurrent of their encounters is breath hot on her neck. Bodies entwined in a haze of sweat, and shadow becomes her weapon, a way to glean secrets, to plot escape. The narrative races on. Settlements buzz with trade, captives paraded, bids rising in a frenzy. Elara witnesses a reseller friend, pale and trembling, sold to a merchant bound for Byzantium, her cries echoing like thunder. Tensions erupt in the hall. A thrall resists, earning a public lashing, her back striped red, a spectacle that stirs the air with blood and bile. Warriors clash over shares, fists flying, thralls caught in the crossfire. Economic incentives drive it all. Slaves mean wealth, labor for farms, bodies for beds, a normalized dominance that blinds the free to the chained. Introspection pierces the chaos. Alone by the fjord, Elara stares at the water, reflecting on her shattered self. What motivates this endurance? A spark of home, a dream of freedom, the resilient core that defies breakage. Revelations come in flashes, the chieftain's own scars, hints of his losses, humanizing the monster without excusing him. This universal insight powers corruption. Dependency's cage invites connection. We see ourselves in her struggle. In the quiet battles against imbalance, echoes of today resonate subtly. The loss of agency in enforced dependency, like modern workplaces where bosses wield control, forcing silent endurance of abuse. Coercive ties bind, power tilting scales, leaving scars unseen. It's the same indignation at systems that dehumanize, at silences that protect the strong. Suspense builds, new elements heightening stakes. Rumors swirl of a grand ritual at chieftain's funeral. where thralls might join him in death. Elara learns of underground networks, thralls trading whispers of revolt. A forbidden alliance forms with a young warrior, his gaze lingering on her with a mix of pity and desire, adding layers of tension. Will betrayal come, or alliance? The chapter crescendos in the whole's heart. Fire roars, mead flows, warriors feast. Elara serves, her movements graceful yet charged, the chieftain's eyes devouring her. He pulls her close, lips claiming hers in a kiss that's raw power and hidden fire. A moment pulsing with erotic intensity, but in her mind, anger crystallizes. This is not the end. As the night fades, she slips a dagger from his belt, hiding it in her folds, a symbol of hope amid despair. Dawn breaks over the fjords, Elara standing at the threshold, the stolen blade cold against her skin. What paths await ritual doom, resale chains, or a spark of uprising? The saga intensifies, leaving you seething with righteous fury, aching for justice and hungry for the revelations yet to come. In this web of fates, resilience whispers, the broken can rise, the silenced can roar.